Imagine a future where humans are turned into abominations and creatures that you'll only see in your nightmares. Well, this is the dreadful future of All Tomorrows, a book by C.M. Kozman titled All Tomorrows, A Billion-Year Chronicle of the Myriad Species and Mixed Fortunes of Man. It explores a theoretical future where human evolution is tinkered with by a superior species, the Q. You may be asking yourself, how did we get here? Well, to that, my friend, I say, let's start from where it all began. So I want you guys to close your eyes and imagine a far-off future where Earth is overpopulated with 12 billion people, and it was soon to buckle under this mass amount of humans. And so they dealt with this problem the only way they knew how, by heading into the stars. Many decades passed and eventually humans settled on Mars, but Mars didn't have a breathable atmosphere. So humans bombarded Mars' surface over centuries with genetically tailored microbes to make Mars inhabitable, and seas had to be built. Eventually, plants that were native to Earth were given a Martian twist and sent to the Red Planet. Humans came on ships from Earth to populate Mars' surface, and so after hundreds of years, Mars' colonization was very much a success, but still, it was nothing compared to Earth, which was now glowing much brighter than ever due to how many humans were leaving it for Mars. But just as all things must come to an end, so did this bright future for Earth. And in an ironic fashion, Mars has planted a seed of their own and separated from Earth to give themselves an identity of their own, adopting the name Martian Americans. And this separation wasn't just because of their different locations, no, but how the Red Planet affected the bodies of the Martian Americans. Because, you see, over time, due to the low gravity, Martian Americans developed a tall and skinny body, and with the help of genetic engineering, well, they also looked like something out of this planet. And so, with no end in its resources, Mars was going to be a challenge to take down, if it could ever go down. And so, we begin the civil war between Earth and Mars. It could be seen from miles away that this was going to be the outcome, because media on Mars, such as songs, movies, and even the daily news, were talking as such. And Mars was the golden boy, while Earth, well, it was seen as only holding back Mars from reaching its true potential now. And so, Mars cut all of its non-essential trade to Earth. Earth could still go on, but not without taking a big chunk of their people's paychecks. And so, with no other choice, Earth was ready to go to war on Mars. And you would imagine war in space to go like how it went in Star Wars. Fighters and intense space battles, nearly dodging comets and swerving past each other to deliver the final blow. But no, not this time. It was slow, and everything had to be perfectly timed to the T. But there were also machines, which meant that no soldier had to face each other. This was to ensure the most amount of destruction without losing more lives. One of Mars's moons, Phobos, was destroyed, and with that, the shattered moon rained down on Mars, only causing more destruction and its downpour. But Earth wasn't safe either. They were facing a polar impact, which killed 1/3 of its population. And so, with these calamities, these actually bonded the planets once more, and they made peace, but only after the cost of 8 billion lives. And so people agreed that things had to change, so there would be no more wars to break out again. And this is where genetically modified people come in. See, they shared a resemblance to humans, but their heads were enlarged to grow a larger brain, and their bodies were more suited for the new planets they were bound to discover. They were known as the Star People. And so after decades, these Star People sought out the planets in our solar system, colonizing Venus first, then the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. But after those two planets, sending out more Star People to farther planets, turned out to be a failure. So this time, they sent machines, and these machines would carry the Star People. But see, an odd occurrence happened. The Star People grew affectionate to these machines, which made them not able to reproduce with humans, and soon they perished. But it wasn't all for naught, because soon a golden age would emerge. Cities were being built, which would surpass those of Mars and Earth, and connections were still there, even though there was millions of miles of space between one another. But in a sick twist of deja vu, this golden age would come to an end. Mankind has always wondered if there is another intelligent life form out there, in the vastness of space. And if there was, what would happen if mankind ran into them? And so, mankind would get an answer to this question when engineers were colonizing a new planet, but they discovered fossils of a Pandoravius pandora, a herbivorous dinosaur that has long been extinct, but on Earth. And so, how did these fossils find their way so far from home? Many believed it was proof that there was a divine God that created everything, but others believed that there was an advanced species that had the powers to take a creature from one planet, transform their bodies to fit better on another planet, and place them on that planet. And so, time passed, with no run-in to this new advanced species. But soon, very soon, they would run into the Q. See, the Q were creatures with godlike powers, the ability to travel quickly from one solar system to another, and to completely change an organism's structure was something you'd see in the movies. But this was no film. See, the Q would also make changes to their own bodies to help them improve. This helped them with the manipulation of organisms that would soon change mankind. Planets were destroyed. Human beings were being changed into creatures or things that made them completely unrecognizable to who they once were. See, the Q only saw humans as another test subject, like how we saw with the Pandoravius Pandora, or like how a child sees a can of Play-Doh, something that can be molded into their desire. The Q ruled over man for 40 million years, but just as fast as they came, they vanished. So we're going to start this off with the worms. See, the worms had a sun, but it was so hot that the surface of their planet was scorched. And the worms had no other choice but to burrow underground. And they were the size of a human stretched out arm. That's how big they were. And their limbs, well, they were modified for only digging. See, in the picture, you can see those little things protruding from their bodies. Those are fingers if you look closely. And see, they didn't have eyes. Well, they had little holes that you can technically call an eye, but they also didn't have teeth or ears. And so they didn't have much to do on their planet, so they just aimlessly burrowed underground. And they found food, then they devoured it. And once they encountered another worm, well, they would either devour them too or reproduce with them. That's the best way I can word it, so YouTube doesn't take this down. And so we move on to our next creature. With the Q's crazy imagination, it's crazy to think that this is technically a human. Because you see, Titans lacked an actual hand, except they did have a thumb, which wasn't all that helpful. So they instead developed their lower lip into something that you'd see in an elephant, their trunk, to better help them eat from trees. Even though they didn't look like it, Titans were actually one of the smartest out of their own human mutations. This was because of their build, which allowed for a developed brain, and yes, over time, they did regain sentience, which allowed them to build homes and even adopt a primitive agriculture lifestyle. They would even eventually communicate and write literature. And it was looking good for these guys. But over many generations, maybe humans could start up again. But sadly, an ice age emerged, which slowly but surely wiped out all of them, never to be seen again. So with the Temptors, we have to talk about that there were two genders because they were completely different from one another. So first we have the female. The female were these cones of flesh which were grounded into the ground like a human carrot, and their heads, if you want to call it that, would protrude from the ground about 2 meters tall in total length. And the males would look closer to a monkey, and unlike the female, the males were actually able to walk on the surface and not reduced to their cage in the soil. The males would clean, feed, and even protect the females from other dangers which lurked on this planet. But listen to this. The males were not doing this on their own will. They were being controlled by the female this whole time. They would use vocals and pheromones to control the males, and they would reproduce with only the strongest, most obedient, and the dumbest to create more males that would just be used as servants, basically. If there was a female that was born, well, the males would carry the female and plant it, and the Temptors were wiped from this planet when a comet obliterated them, ending the agony of the Temptors. The Colonials were, well, they were known for giving the Q a run for their money. They fought off not one, but 2 Q invasions, but as they say, third time's a charm, because on the third try, the Q's invasion was a success, and they showed no mercy. They turned these people into a wall of flesh, basically, just muscles and nerves. They were given the task of a living filter, and the Q made sure to leave their eyes and their conscience to ensure the most amount of torture and pain. When the Q left, the Colonials were hoping for an end to their suffering, but throughout the generations, they developed into survivors, and so they covered their planet in their flesh, and to end on a good note, it was hopeful. So this has to be one of my favorites, which is a weird thing to say, but hear me out. So whenever the Q came, the Star People did one thing: dig and dig down. So they thought that if they waited enough, well, the Q would leave, and that did not come true. Because the Q located their homes underground and without mercy, transformed them into these pale, lanky, and almost mouse-like creatures. They had to adapt with their new body, and since they were in caves most of their lives, they ran into predators, and we get one mention in the book of a crocodile-like fish that lives in the streams of the caves. The blind folk had to navigate throughout the caves with a banshee-like scream, which honestly brings a chill down my spine. But as we know now, that these creatures were doomed to their fate when the tectonic plates on their planet destroyed their homes, leaving them to be forgotten. The Flyers are one of the more common humans that you'd come across if you're traveling to different planets. You could relate them to a bat on Earth. Going into the biology of this creature, they had a turbine-like heart. This was artificially made by the Q in their invasions. This heart would directly send oxygen into the bloodstream. What's the purpose? Well, this was meant that they could develop larger brains without having to give up their flying abilities. And they had these swollen-like glands in which they would use for flotation, but since they were in the skies for so long, it was hard for them to adapt back to land. There was another version though, a monkey-like human with a membrane that they'd use for flying. The first thing you might say while seeing this is, why do they look almost 2D? Well, it's because of their planet, and it had 36 times the normal amount of gravity on it, so that's why they look like this. The Q changed their hands, making 3 of them to paddle, and 1 of them for dragging itself across the planet, or it would also use it as an antenna. One of the more disturbing aspects of this human is that of their eyes. One eye would constantly stare up, while the other, it would use to look what's happening in front of them. And don't judge on looks, because these guys, they actually thrived on their planet. See, not everyone got turned into monsters, and Spacers is one example. Even though they don't look like it, it wasn't due to the Q. These guys hid from the Q in space. They hauled out asteroids, which they would use to make their new spaceships. Since they didn't have a device to turn on gravity, well, their bones grew out, making them longer. And I'm not even kidding when I say this, they developed a propulsion-like system, and well, I think you can guess where. The Spacers did outlast the Q on their terror, but taking a look at them, they couldn't exactly go back to how they used to live. With the next entry being our last for the video, I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching, and I really hope you guys liked the video so far. I wanted to switch up my style, and it's been a lot of fun making this video because this has to be one of my favorite books. I highly recommend watching Muradelli's animation. They give you a much better visualization than these pictures. I will put a link in the description to his channel, so y'all can check it out. And with that, let's head into our last entry. And so I want to show you guys these modular people, because even though they don't look like it, these are descendants of the Colonials, you know, those walls of flesh. This was proof that humans wouldn't back down. And so many generations passed, and that's when we get the modular people. They were colonies that were developed, and the purpose was to be a functional part in a bigger body. Did I forget to mention that these guys are actually humans combined into one? My bad. So with that, they had to learn to work together, and that they did. And with that, they managed to best the Q from the beginning to the end. And I just want to leave you guys on a good note, I guess, but that's going to do it for this video. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and leave in the comments if you guys like this editing format. It's something new, and it's obviously going to change over time. And just let me know what other things that you guys like to see changed. Thank you all for the new subscribers and kind comments on the previous video. That means the world to me. I'm hoping to reach maybe 20 subs by the end of this month, but we'll see. I hope you guys stay safe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye.